It's a problem I wrestled with early in my career when I held a position known as data manager for a manufacturing corporation. And the problem was trying to get a handle on all the engineering data that left the product center, product design and components and specifications and so on. Get a handle on that, and then I had clients that included accounting, for costing, purchasing, for inventory, acquisition and control, and operations. And that, in our case, that didn't include maintenance because my engineering data was for manufacturing a product. But it was a mountain of paper, and we would send 3-ring notebooks out to the plants and drawings and stuff that I'm betting that a lot of times they may not even have double checked. It was a never-ending process. It was paper-driven. It was in the 70s, and I tried to put it on the computer, which I did successfully, but then the other things happened. But anyway, it's still a problem 50 years later that I can't believe that with all the application of computer software and so on, it just seems to have driven up complexity and not solved the problem that we have of making sure that there's a data flow of information, data from process design. In the case I'll be talking about today, it'll be process design, not product design, and into construction and into handover to owner-operators and operations and maintenance. And then you touch upon everybody else that needs that data, such as enterprise systems. Hi, this is Gary on manufacturing. I recently attended a forum, or a workshop it was called, at Texas A&M University, and a lot of this conversation will be about that particular workshop. Is the second annual ADIF Workshop, Driving Asset Data and Systems Interoperability Toward an Open and Neutral Data Ecosystem. Something I've been working with people on for a long time. Interesting forum. Today's podcast is sponsored by Inductive Automation, makers of Ignition, the world's most versatile industrial automation platform for connecting data, systems, and people. With the new Ignition 8.3 release, you can easily manage time series and event data, quickly create custom graphics with onboard drawing tools, and centralize control using Ignition's new gateway interface with global search and deep link launching, providing additional support for Git, containers, and private data protection to go along with its unlimited licensing. Ignition 8.3 takes industrial operations to the next level. Download Ignition for free at inductiveautomation.com, spelled just as it sounds. Longtime sponsors. I went to their conference in September and saw the launch of 8.3. Just fantastic stuff inside. I can't describe it all. I tried a little bit. A lot of stuff there. And this is one software application that doesn't seem to require the user to fit their system around the software like so much of it does. This is more flexible, and it's also IT-friendly stuff, so that if you're in engineering, you don't have to worry about any kind of real problems in interfacing your data with the IT world. It comes together. I'm not going to use the typical buzzwords, but anyway, check out inductiveautomation.com for Ignition. So I'm going to go back in time. We met in a conference room in an office in Barrington, Illinois, 2013, I believe, or 14, somewhere a long time ago. And it was a place where sometime later a couple of guys thought they'd screw me over in a business deal, but I came out ahead in the end. That was fine, but that's kind of a memory of that place. But we gathered together, and I was there. Alan Johnston of Mimosa was there. Don't remember other people, and we had people on a phone. And what we were doing was discussing this problem of the data interoperability, asset data getting through from the process information design, which is usually in a P&ID and other engineering documents, but it needs to not be in paper form, it needs to be in a form. So the owner operators would say, well, give it to me digitally, so they give them a PDF. Well, PDFs are typically not searchable and not handy and very quickly out of date versus the way it was actually built and then the way it's operated and maintained a little bit later down the road. So that was a problem, and we were looking for something to solve this significant problem for the owner operators. So real-time live data so that things are kept up. This has to do with management of change, so that something has changed here. It's easy to update the software so that everywhere, anywhere, so an engineer at 2 a.m. Has something go wrong with a unit, can go over there and find the latest information about which motor, which pump, where it was purchased, whatever they need to do to either fix it or get a new one off the shelf and fix that unit and get it back up in operation. So we're looking for data flow seamlessly and interoperably. And we called this the Open Industrial Interoperability Ecosystem. And it was developed using standards. So it's a system of systems and using standards so that the data can flow in standard manner, even if the control system or the HMI system or whatever system might be a black box, don't care, as long as they expose data according to standards so that they can be incorporated and moved along. And I plot this context as the introduction to what I mentioned in my intro, the second ADIF workshop at Texas A&M University. That was last week. I'm recording this on November 17th, and last week I was in College Station for the first time in my life at Texas A&M University. And the topic was important enough that it drew about 60 to 70 people. I didn't count them, but the room was full. And I already said the topic is driving asset data and systems interoperability, something that was near and dear to the hearts. This workshop brought together owner operators, so there were management level, upper management level people from places like ExxonMobil and Shell and Chevron and Marathon, and I'm sure I forgot a couple. And it also brought together some senior people from EPCs, engineering companies, a couple of systems integrator type people. I know we had somebody from Accenture, and I'm not sure anybody else in that realm was there. So there was that group, the group that wants something built for them, the group that can design it, oversee the construction, and integrate all the components. So that group was there. I was there because I was invited to be the moderator and speak briefly on standards. So I mentioned the OIIE. That's what got me to that forum, and I'll get into that a little bit later as we talked about the use of standards. And there was also discussion from a number of universities. Texas A&M is putting together a consortium of universities globally doing all kinds of interesting research in this area. Texas A&M presented a paper on work they were doing to take P&ID and that sort of engineering documentation and turn it into usable data. And they've made some progress on that, and I've got more on that later. And then we had then we had another forum of software vendors who were there, and they had tabletop exhibits, and a number of them spoke well. So Dr. David Zhang he's professor, and he's the leader of this group, this workshop and this forum. And he welcomed attendees, and he talked about research that they're doing and how they're putting things together and getting cooperation from other universities doing some similar work. And then later on, one of his colleagues talked about the work they're doing to try to use standards and standard formats and so on to move data from a P&ID to into the operations and maintenance systems. So then they put a panel on. So every group that I mentioned had a panel. So there was a panel of owner operators, and I took some notes. But basically, what I got out of the notes from the owner operators was a couple of key words. One was collaboration. It's like, guys, we surely would like to see some collaboration amongst all of you to help us solve our data problem for operations and maintenance and in tying into manufacturing software and like Ignition, or they didn't mention that, but whatever, and ERP and everything else that needs this data. We need help. And the other thing they talked about was operationalizing. Come on, we need to operationalize all this stuff. We need to get it working so that we can actually use the stuff. When I was in grad school in philosophy, there's a field of study called eschatology, which is the study of final things or end things in philosophy. And we had a phrase that the graduate assistants put up in our office, called operationalize your eschaton. In other words, it's kind of what the owner operators were saying. Come on, let's operationalize all this stuff. So then and then one of the owner operators quipped a little bit later in their forum roundtable that we know a project's done when this big van backs up into the loading dock and they start unloading paper. Okay, like I said, 50 years ago, I was trying to eliminate paper from a lot smaller and less complex manufacturing system, and I can't even begin to imagine what in the heck the plant engineers and the process engineers and the operations executives and so on are going to do with a van load of paper to try to file it away, to find it in some kind of usable format and so on. I can't even believe something as complex as chemical plants or refineries and that sort of stuff. How do you make sense out of that? It's got to be really difficult. I'm glad I'm not working there. That's all I've got to say. And then we got the EPCs and the systems integrators up. And what I heard from them, there was presentations about what they're doing and how they do it and so on, and which is good. I mean, they're good, competent engineering people. I'm not going to denigrate any of them. But they kept saying, our hands are tied. You, the owner-operator, specify exactly what software we have to use to design and so on. And then the vendor ties our hands by telling us you have to do things this way. And so we have to learn your software and we have to do it their way. Our hands are tied. We have no ability to work on this process this way, system of design. And I've talked with systems integrators in a number of different places, and at a bad point in my career, I actually was involved in designing and building automated assembly machines. So I've talked to people and they say, well, our hands are tied because of this and this and this. And I'll say, can you think outside of the box? Can you say, I hate that phrase, but anyway, you got to think outside of that software box and or whatever, and go back to the owner operator, to the end user, whoever your client is, and say, if I can do it this way, if I can do some value add, instead of just like mutely or meekly going along with them and them and them and them, say, hey, I can do this and this and this, and it'll save you money and save you time. Actually, they're probably less interested in saving money than they are saving time. Getting a process up and running more quickly is money. So it's like, why don't you try to think, along these lines of what can I do for a value add? But what I heard was our hands are tied and we can't do much. And I understand it's a difficult problem. It's not, if it was easy, it'd be done. And not being easy, it needs engineers. Okay, I understand that. I've lived some of that life, not at that level, but still, can I plead with you? Think along some bigger lines. And so I took the standards and standards committee then, and we talked about a number of things. So we had I talked about Texas A&M working on a project to turn P&ID data from the EPC into usable data for the rest of the operations. There's a standards organization called DEXPI, DEXPI, and the executive of DEXPI was actually there in person from Germany, and talking about that. And they have a system, and they kind of use some other system. I don't want to get into gory details in the weeds, but anyway, they iterated a few times, and they've come up with a way to move the data from P and IDs into an XLS, an Excel spreadsheet format, which is useful. I mean, a lot of manufacturing software such as Ignition or Wonderware can take that Excel data and import it and make it useful for them. So this is non-trivial, to say the least, what they're doing. So there's at least two things going on to help get that engineering data into usable format. Somebody else on the panel, somebody I didn't know, they're called CFOS, C-F-I-H-O-S, CFOS, European consortium again. And I was the moderator, so I was standing there and I couldn't take notes. And so I couldn't but I just remember a few of the slides, which there were many. And the slide I remember the most made it appear that they think that they can come up with a standard that will be like the standard to end all standards to do all this work. But it will take years. He says, we're several years away. I didn't write that down. I don't know how long, but next year is too long. And it was more than that. So I'm not really sure, but it reminded me, I was listening to a podcast today. There's an analyst by the name of Benedict Evans from England. And he worked for Andreessen Horowitz for a while. He started out as a mobile phone analyst years ago, and he kept growing with the technologies. And his latest, so he works alone, and he puts together a slide deck every year, and he goes around and he gets paid to present it. I should take a lesson. Maybe I can make some money instead of spending it. But anyway, the slide deck this year is on AI. But he was talking about standards in the conversation and with his co-host. And he says, if there are 10 standards in this particular market, and somebody comes along and says, I'm going to do a standard that incorporates all the standards, what you wind up with is 11 standards. And we've seen that play out in the areas I've been involved in. Try field buses, for example, and a few other things. So let's see. So we got those two standards out, and then we had Chris Monchiski from ISA 95 to talk about ISA 95. And ISA is part of something called Open O&M, Open Operations and Maintenance. It's right now it's primarily MIMOSA, which is a maintenance information standards organization, and ISA, especially ISA 95, but 88 also fits in there, and 99 also fits in there. But so Chris talked about what was going on with ISA 95, laid out the thing, and how its role as manufacturing model, if you will, and messaging model for the actual manufacturing and production information. So we kind of laid those foundations. We had Dr. Marcus Stumpner from the University of South Australia. He's been working with the OIIE for quite some time down there, doing research on it. And what he's been doing is proving out proof of concepts and pilots on using these standards and proving it out that it actually works. I was there. I wasn't involved. I didn't do any coding or anything silly like that. But I was there the first time the OIIE was proven out on an oil and gas interoperability program that they put together. It was a debutanizer project, and it was done. They had 3 different engineering software platforms to the design, and took the data out, put it into OSIPI, put it into Wonderware, put it into some other things, and proved that the data could flow. It was possible to make the data flow, and this was 13 years ago. The proof is there. It's just getting people to understand the business value of implementing this stuff, and the people that really need to see the systems value are the systems integrators, that this would actually make their life better. They can't just make a living anymore just writing millions of lines of code. They've got to find a value add, and there are a couple of integrators now looking at this saying, I think I can find a value add. I think I can go to my client and say, I have a value add, and we can use OIIE. So hopefully that happens. So anyway, so if we can really get to this thing where we can really, with a standard way of getting data from the P&ID and the other engineering documentation and specifications and so on, and that we know all the components and the standards for all the components and all the engineering data and so on, and if we can move that and we can get it into like operations software, so it can integrate with maybe the control system, your Emerson, Yokogawa, Honeywell, ABB, whatever, so on. Okay, that's one start. Another start is into manufacturing software such as Ignition or Wonderware. To be honest, I'm not really sure who else is out there these days. Maybe Aviva, part of Aviva, and probably others. But anyway, if we can get all that moving into this stuff and into your maintenance software program, so that the maintenance people, when they go out at 2 a.m. and they have to troubleshoot something, they can just kind of call up on their mobile device and find the real data, the up-to-date data, and all the stuff that they need, or can click onto a website or a YouTube video or something that shows more detail. That would be so fantastic. And we're getting close. If we just need to operationalize it. So my closing remark to you is operationalize your eschaton. Go out there and don't talk about it, but see where you can add value, see where you can use these standards, see where you can do this, and actually get stuff done in a better. After all these years, it's time to like ditch the paper. So this is Gary. Once again, kind of rambling on manufacturing. My whole life was involved with that, and except for when I backslid into marketing once. Marketing. Anyway, I don't do that. So today's podcast is sponsored by Inductive Automation, makers of Ignition, the world's most versatile industrial automation platform for connecting data, systems, and people. With the new Ignition 8.3 release, you can easily manage time series and event data, quickly create custom graphics with onboard drawing tools, centralized control using Ignition's new gateway interface with global additional support, with Git, containers, and private data protection to go along with its unlimited licensing, which is a key feature to this day after 20 years. Ignition 8.3 takes industrial operations to the next level. Download Ignition for free at inductiveautomation.com. Thank you for listening. Take this information, and as you go out and go today, just remember, be kind, be gracious. Life's too short. Have a good one.